Transitioning to the NBA, the LA Clippers made some noise yesterday by reuniting with a former Clipper. Yes, they traded for Eric Bledsoe. They acquired the guard from the Memphis Grizzlies after he was traded from the Pelicans, and they shipped off Rondo, Patrick Beverly, and Daniel Oturu to Memphis. Now, obviously, Bledsoe, a former Clipper drafted by the Clippers in 2010, spent 3 seasons there, was really just a young thoroughbred. This was a guy that was unhinged, was really unrefined, but just a young bull playing. He was tough, gritty, and then he was traded away to Phoenix, had the best years of his career in Phoenix, averaging 21 points per game, jumped around a little bit, found himself in Milwaukee, and surprisingly, this is actually a money saver, ironically enough, for the Clippers. It saves them about $30 million in the luxury tax and frees up about $8.3 million for a mid-level trade kind of exception for this upcoming season. But there's so much pressure. I've talked about this before. There's so much pressure in sports to improve your roster every single year. And how the teams that are bold, the teams that are audacious and making big swings are typically the ones that are going to experience success. And so I'd be hypocritical in this situation here to suggest that the Clippers made the wrong move trying to be bold, trying to go out and acquire a guy who they think is going to make them better. Because clearly they felt like we need to trade for Eric Bledsoe. This is a guy that's going to benefit us. So it's true that the good franchises, they don't settle for complacency. They don't rest on their laurels. They try to go out and make improvements. And while I admire all of that, and all of that is true, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes patience is a virtue. And standing pat isn't always the worst solution. Because to me, this was simply a lateral move for the LA Clippers. I don't think that this is a true vertical move. I think this is more of a lateral move. And so when I think about what the Clippers needed and what Eric Bledsoe fills, sure, he provides more durability. He's a tough-nosed defender. He will be more impactful in the regular season. But I don't think that there was anyone that the Clippers, under their current financial situation with the current guys that they had, that they were going to be able to trade for this offseason that was going to elevate them into title contention, especially with Kawhi Leonard out. Because the only way they could have acquired a monumental piece, a real guy a real impact player that can elevate them into title contention, is if they were to trade Kawhi Leonard for another star player. And if they were to do that, that would be a public denouncement and acknowledgement that trading for Kawhi Leonard in the first place was a huge mistake and a failure. And it would essentially relegate them back down to irrelevance if they were to trade Kawhi Leonard. So we knew that they weren't going to do that. And so to me, I think that Eric Bledsoe, listen, yes, he's a marginal improvement over those two guys, but it's more of a lateral move because, again, yes, he is durable. He's a little younger. He's a little healthier. So during the regular season, he can help win you some more ball games. There's no question about that. But the unfortunate reality is, as much as I love Eric Bledsoe's competitive spirit, and he's fearless, there's a reason why he was viewed upon earlier in his career as a really valuable point guard, is because he showed so many flashes of improving his game. I mean, there were games when he was with the Milwaukee Bucks where you're looking at him play and you're saying to himself, this guy looks like a top 10 point guard in the league. But the issues that beset him everywhere he's gone is that he's just been extremely inconsistent with his play. His play vacillates from game to game. Again, certain games with the Bucks looks like a top 10 point guard. But then in the playoffs and the postseason, his production dissipates. And here's the interesting thing. Now, I'm going to neglect and basically negate what he did with the Pelicans last year. I don't really care about the 12 points per game. Personally, I think he was depressed in New Orleans. He didn't want to be there. So I'm going to overlook that one season. So if we look back at the last 2 years that Eric Bledsoe played with the Milwaukee Bucks, 2019 and 2020, those were his last 2 years. In 2019, in the regular season versus the postseason, regular season, Eric Bledsoe, 16 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 48% from the floor, 33% from the three-point line. Very respectable numbers. That same postseason, those numbers dropped to 14 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 41% shooting from the floor, 23.5% shooting from the three-point line. So the postseason production completely went in a spin cycle and in a downward slope. Then you look at 2020, which was arguably his best statistical season with the Bucks, given the impact that he was having. He averaged 15 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, very similar to 2019. Shot 47% from the floor and 34% from the three-point line, a very respectable stat line across the board. Those 2020 that 2020 postseason, granted, it was in the bubble, but still, in that postseason, averaged 12 points, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 6 assists. These are the staggering numbers, though. The shooting percentage, 39% from the floor, 25% from the three-point line, and that was without Giannis for a couple of those games. So the production completely dissipated and diminished in the postseason, given where we expected him to be from the regular season. Completely kind of stepped down a peg from that regular season. And so the Milwaukee Bucks had to look at themselves in the mirror and say, okay, they felt like their biggest Achilles heel, their biggest impediment to winning and achieving more success was at the point guard position, was because of Eric Bledsoe. They truly believed that their shortcomings were as a result of Eric Bledsoe. So what did they do? The one significant trade that they made was at the point guard position. They shipped off Eric Bledsoe and they traded for Jrue Holiday. And that happened to be the difference maker, and they won a title this past June. So because the team itself was very similarly constructed this year as it was last year. Eric Bledsoe was the main difference. That was really the primary key difference, key piece from 2 years ago than last year. Was Jrue Holiday for Eric Bledsoe. So while I do think his production will be slightly better than the production that you had gotten from Beverly and from Rondo, especially, even maybe in the postseason, potentially, although I think more so in the regular season. So I think it's a marginal improvement. But I also am not even entirely sure how he's going to mesh with Reggie Jackson, who they just re-signed. Can they even play the two of them together at the same time? Can they be on the floor at the same time? They're both undersized. Now, obviously, Eric Bledsoe is a stronger, tough, and aggressive kind of point guard, but Reggie Jackson is a point guard. You can't really put Reggie Jackson at the two. He's too small. So I think that for Memphis, this is a great trade because you knew Eric Bledsoe wasn't going to stay there anyway, and he was going to want out. And now you acquire two veteran point guards. At least in the meantime, you've got two veteran point guards who can help be a mentor to John Morant. I mean, Patrick Beverly, he's the perfect embodiment of a Memphis Grizzly. He embodies the grit and grind mentality. He will absolutely be a perfect fit in the grindhouse. That's exactly the type of character, the type of guy that would flourish in Memphis. And to be honest, listen, I don't think Rondo is going to stay there. I think he'll likely be bought out. Maybe he's cut. He's not going to stay in Memphis. But if he happens to, I think he could be a really valuable backup point guard to John Morant. Two very hard-nosed, tough, disciplined veterans that I think could work wonders for a guy like John Morant.